Cortana, the M&P Shield Bros have entered the chat. The Smith & Wesson M&P Shield long-term 10-year review starts now. If you've ever made beating the Halo campaigns on legendary difficulty your entire personality, then go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, guys. Welcome back to the Trench Grenade channel. I have a very exciting review for you today on the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield. My journey began on the Shield over a decade ago in roughly 2015 to 2016 on a 45 ACP, the Lord's Caliber Shield. It was mega based back in those days. And if you fast forward all the way to current day to doing burn down testing on the Smith & Wesson M&P 9 Shield, it is going to be a very exciting video for you today. Did you know that if every single viewer right now were to hit the like button, that would not only help out this channel in more ways that I can even begin to possibly articulate, but it will also spawn an AI version of Cortana to live rent-free in your head. Let me know what your favorite version of Cortana from which Halo game is down below, as well as your favorite version of the M&P Shield, both which generation and what caliber. Last but not least, if you donate to the channel's funding, the ammunition fund or the war fund in the description below, I will send you a private link to our closed Discord server. You can get access to that by either joining the Patreon or simply donating $5 or more to the ammunition or war fund. I look forward to seeing everybody in the Discord server. Where to begin? Well, let's talk about the history of the Shield, and today we're going to be going over the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if you disagree with my opinions, just remember this is thousands and thousands of rounds of 45 ACP and 9mm burned out in training, concealed carry courses, and just on the flat range, burning it down on a 9mm and 45 ACP Shield. So keep that in mind. By the way, leave your combat llama emojis down below. I look forward to seeing all of those combat llamas. 1 is none, 2 is 1, 3 is better. So 3 llamas is the standard for this video. The Shield was first created and began manufacturing and released back in 2012 by Smith & Wesson. Now, of course, back in those days, it was just the Shield, not the 1.0 Shield. And from 2012 to 2019, they sold literally over 3 million units. That's a lot of freaking guns. If you go from 2019 at 3 million to 2025, we can all estimate that it's probably in the neighborhood of 4 to 5 million M&P Shields are out there in the wild, and there are a bunch of very proud Shield owners that are probably going to be mad at me by the time this review is over. So I apologize in advance. Just remember, I'm one of you, but I'm going to be very critical on our hero, the M&P Shield. Now, my journey with the M&P Shield starts back in 2015 with that 45 ACP mega base shield for back in the day. Back then, the 45 ACP was one of the most popular concealed carry calibers because we were carrying guns like this, okay? Back in those days, the 1911 was still very common. A full steel 1911 was very common to be found on somebody's hip. So I'm going to show you a lot of the guns that people were carrying from 2012 to 2016 time frame, starting with one of my favorite guns. This is a Model 36 Smith & Wesson, okay? What some guys like to call a Chief Special. This is an OG, okay? An OG. So this is a realistic option for what somebody might be carrying back in the day, okay? So say goodbye to the Smith & Wesson Model 36 and 38 Special only. Another option that guys might have been carrying, this weapon is on duty right now, would be a Glock 26, okay? So, of course, we have the Baby Glock Generation 3 back in those days. A very popular carry, so both the Smith & Wesson Model 36 and the Glock 26, very, very common weapons to be found. Some guys would just carry the gun that they were carrying at work, okay? The Glock 19 Gen 3. This is what a lot of guys opted to carry. Just, hey, I'll carry. Most of the guys were carrying 40 cal back in the day, but there was a big transition over to the Glock 19 during this time, during the release in 2012 of the Shield, okay? So you have the Model 36, we talked about it. This is gonna be on a lot of guys' hips back then. The 19, the 20, the Glock 26, okay? We got the Glock 26 and the Glock 19. And what came out a couple years later, during when I returned from Ukraine back in roughly 2014 or 15, somewhere around there, was the Glock 43, okay? So if you fast forward a couple years, the Glock 43 is going to be one of the biggest, I guess, vanquishers of the Shield. We'll get into that in a little bit, but the Glock 43 was a realistic option. And last but not least, back in the day, back in the teams, we had dudes carrying full steel 1911s. This, of course, is the Raider from TSOS. Okay, tons of reviews on it. I'll just let you guys go spoil it for yourselves over there, or I won't spoil it for you, but go look it up. But yes, dudes were still in 2012 to 2015, dudes were still carrying full steel 1911s back in those days. Okay, so yes, it's a thing. It's an era that I lived through. I owned a ton of 1911s back in the day, like Springfield Armory, the Commander, Kimber Raptor 2s, Kimber Custom 2s, back when Kimber was actually good. Springfield, this is the TSOS government, okay? But those are the guns that were being carried back in the day that the Shield was initially released. So a lot of us ran out. I was like, you know, between the age of 18 and 21 back in those days. And a lot of us back in 2012-ish, ran out or were gifted or whatever the legalities were to be able to own a 45 ACP Shield, because that was what was based back in the day. Now this gun is a 9mm and it does have the manual safety right there, okay? So now that I've told you kind of where my story begins and where, you know, where the hype, if you will, for the Shield actually began back in those days, let's get into the cons. And there are a lot of cons, okay? So get ready. Remember, this is fair and impartial. I'm never going to pull punches because nowadays, spoiler alert, I'm going to be comparing it to guns that exist in modern offering, like the 43, 365, 365 XL. I won't say the Hellcat because it's kind of cringe. I'm not a Hellcat enjoyer, but yes, guns of that size and weight, okay? So we're not only comparing it for the guns that existed back in the day, but also we're comparing it to the guns of modern day. And yes, this is a real OG model Smith & Wesson. Okay, let's get into the cons. Brace yourself. It looks like trash, okay? Let's take this gun. You tell me. You tell me which one looks better, okay? And be honest. Which one looks better? A Glock 43, okay? Or, let you get a good look at it, a Glock 43 or the Shield. It just looks bad, all right? It's ugly. That's a minor complaint. Obviously, that's why it's first on the list. But the guns themselves, they look like a can of tuna is the best way I can explain it. It literally just looks like a tuna. It is a tuna fish, okay? It doesn't look good. Not a fan. Back in the day, it was the rage. I can't stress that enough. The 45 ACP one, it was the rage. But the first complaint of cosmetic purposes, it just looks like trash. All right, can we all agree on that? It looks bad. There's going to be somebody like, I don't care. All right, let's move on to more important things. The grip. I have on here that the grip is slicker than ice. Okay, slicker than ice. These grips are the worst grips that you will ever find on any firearm ever. They are the slickest. If your hand gets wet at all trying to hold these grips, you are in for a rough day, okay? The grips are slicker than ice. I literally have that in my notes, all right? So the grips are horrible. And before you say, I have the grips on here twice, so I guess we'll get into the second reason why the grips are horrible. This weapon is clear and safe, okay? So say I was gonna go shoot. The grip, while on the surface, you might think, oh my goodness, this grip is amazing, right? Even if we were to factor in the pinky down here. Assume I have a full grip right now, okay? When you actually shoot this gun, it is a blade. It even looks skinny right there. The skinniness of the grip is actually a major detriment to being able to fire quickly and effectively at 15 meters and on with this gun, okay? Even for advanced shooters, it is just simply it's not great, okay? It's not great. So both the slickness, okay, the slippery slickness of the grip and the skinniness, when you grab it, you can feel it in both the palm of your hand and your front fingers here. It's like you're squeezing together a blade is the best way I can put it. So the grip sucks. How about that, okay? Just being honest, if you compare this, okay, horrible. Even this revolver has a better grip, okay? This Glock 43 has a better grip, okay? And this is a skinny grip too, but it feels a lot better in the hand, both for shooting and for carrying. This Glock 43X, better grip, okay? A lot better grip, significantly better grip, you could say. This Glock 26 with its, we'll just let that look there for a second, standard plus, standard 1 capacity magazine right there, okay? Standard capacity, everything there, perfect, way better than the Shield. And of course, the 19, have I beat a dead horse yet? Way better, all right? And if you were a boomer back in those days, or mega base, of course, way better, right? And they were obviously going for the 1911 grip angle when they designed the Shield grip, okay? So compared to what was available then and now, it's bad. Let's move on from the grip. The barrel length. This has a 3.10 inch barrel, okay? 3.1. It's the guy that she told you not to worry about that you actually don't have to worry about. Why is this important? Even on a 43X, you have a 3.41 inch barrel, okay, on the 43X. And if you go up to or on a 43, if you go up to a 43X, you have a 4.17 inch barrel. Now, why are we talking about size? Does size really matter? Well, it does, because when you're using hollow points, okay, when you're using hollow points to potentially have to protect yourself and make sure that you are accountable for every round fired out of the gun, you want them to perform like hollow points. So if you're using a little baby barrel at 3.41 inches compared to the competition, at 3.10. This is a 3.10 inch barrel, okay, 3.1. When you compare that to even the competition in the tiny category with a 3.41 out of the Glock 43 or the 4.17 out of the Glock 43X, what you are going to find out, the Glock 48. I keep saying the Glock 43X. The Glock 43 and the Glock 43X have the same barrel length. The Glock 48, what would be comparable, is a 4.17 inch barrel. So why are we talking so much about barrel length? One, for controllability of the pistol while actually shooting, but more importantly, hollow point expansion. You are not going to get the expansion that you want out of your barrel due to the tiny nature and not having enough velocity, even though 9mm is not super, I guess, finicky or super reliant upon the barrel. This tiny little guy is not what you want if you had to choose, okay? A slightly longer barrel is gonna give you better hollow point expansion due to the velocity that you get from that little bit more of barrel length, okay? Even though they're close, they're not, okay? It's just a much longer barrel, significantly speaking. Even though the overall length doesn't look like it, the barrel is a lot longer, which even a 43, okay? Beat the dead horse there about how important it is to have hollow point performance if you need it. If you're using this for the purposes that it's for, you want hollow point performance. I got more stuff. I'm going to skip the rest of the stuff in my notes about the grip, but there's more complaining in the notebook of truth here, okay? All right. Let's move on to the trigger. Do I really need to say this? I'm going to say it. This is where my 45 ACP gun died. I'm going to show you how, okay? So in this little nub, you see that little nub right there? Everybody's seeing that, right? At home? Okay, that little nub is where the 45 ACP gun got sent out to pasture, okay? If you see that nub on both the trigger, the safety right here, and the actual back here, that's supposed to stop it from traveling any farther. See that right there? How it's supposed to stop the trigger from traveling. Well, on my OG 45 ACP Shield, it did not perform as advertised. And what would happen is, okay, gun is clear and safe, we're going, boom. It would go over that nub, okay, behind it, thus causing me to have to force the gun back into, or the trigger back into action, if you will, to be able to use it again. That's a big problem, all right? So the trigger, not only for that, but also for the actual weight of the trigger and actual performance. Okay, you have all this weird, fine. That's fine for a striker fired gun. But what you don't want is that. It's like a 5.5 to 6 pound trigger. Like it just feeling, we'll go, okay, going here to the 43 or 43. Wall, okay. A lot smoother of a take up. Much smoother. Like it's significantly better than the Shield, okay? So the trigger all around, both in like catastrophic, that going up and over that hump wall safety device right there, and causing your gun to just stop working momentarily and having to like force it back with your finger. Short of that complaint and it killing my 45 ACP gun, not a good trigger. It's just not. So for the M&P guys that hate me now, your trigger sucks. I don't care. Okay, moving on. Did you know that if you donate to the War Fund, the Channel Fund, the Ammo Fund, down below you get access to the Discord server, a closed Discord server where you can stay up late, find buddies to train with, game with, and talk about all your favorite Shield pros and cons. Do all that. Thanks for donating. DM me after you donate. I'll see your code. Boom. Okay? It's the whole thing. Thanks for doing that. Or just join the Patreon and now you get access to behind the scenes content. What? Also, make sure you're following on Instagram. Moving on from the trigger. I literally have in my notes, heavy AF. Okay? Heavy AF. Bad trigger, bad design, this weird hinge situation. It's bad. The whole situation on the trigger is bad. All right. Spring. What do I have on? Okay. Spring tension. All right. This is going to be for your smaller statured or just normal shooter that doesn't want an annoying gun. To reciprocate this gun, okay, the amount of pressure and spring tension that is on this gun is enormous when compared, okay, that's annoying. What I'm talking about is how much physical strength it would take to do a tap, rack, malfunction clearing, or to just lock the slide to the rear for administrative purposes or to unload and show clear, okay? The amount of force that it physically takes to pull this slide to the rear is ridiculous. And yes, I go to the gym. Yes, I lift, even though I might not look like it. I do go to the gym. And even on, 2,000 or 1,950 calorie deficit in a cut for winter right now, this slide is going to be a problem for a smaller statured shooter. To give this to your wife or girlfriend is going to be a problem when compared to the 43X. This one is buttery. Dude, it's a Glock and it's easy. Way easier, okay? Way easier than the Shield. What else? We'll compare it to the 1911. Way easier, okay? Way easier. We'll compare it to the 19. Way easier, okay? So I don't know what's going on with the amount of pressure that's in this Shield spring system. I'm not a freaking engineer. Or I'm just a guy on the internet wearing a flannel telling you why your Shield spring sucks. Anyway, yes, the amount of pressure or strength and foot-pounds of energy, what would it even be called? You need a freaking winch to pull this thing back. If you're got your truck and you get stuck, well, when you have a malfunction, tap rack malfunction, while you're pulling your truck out from the winch, you can also pull the slide back on your pistol. Okay, there you go. There's a good example. So, yeah, it sucks. And if you're like, it's not that bad, you need to go to the gym. One, post physique. Okay, you can DM me physique. Kind of weird, but I bet we can compare physique if you want. But the 43, which is really the main competitor here, or the 43X, way easier time being able to reciprocate that slide. Okay, let's move on. We're going to beat a dead horse on a lot of these to hammer home the importance, right? Because I feel like a lot of guys give the Shield a pass just because it's like the OG, right? Not here, not on this channel. All right, moving on. Size to capacity. All right, here we go. We're gonna bury it before we move on to the pros, the sustains. The size to capacity ratio is horrible. Okay, I got it. It was 2012, and now there's different ones like the Shield Plus. We're not talking about those. We're talking about the original Shield 1.0s, okay? The ones that are the same as this, okay? 1.0 Shield. The 8+1, not it. I've made many videos about 10 rounds is the standard, minimum, the minimum standard, the least amount you should have, okay? So whether that be a 43X, okay, or whether that be you just are an adult and carry adult items, all right? You do whatever you want, but the capacity to size of the gun, the overall size of the gun, this is a 43, and it gets it done, okay? I know I'm a decade late to the show, but you guys get it. A 43 gets it done with like 1 round less, right? And it's way smaller. So the size to a capacity ratio is just not there for the Shield. All right, if you were to ask me right now, and we're about to move on to the pros, if you were to ask me, Trench, should I get a 9mm? I would say this is going to be one of the few times you'd hear me say this. A 9mm or a 45. OG 1.0 for whatever reason you're on an island and there's only those two things. You can only pick a 9mm or a 45 ACP. This is one of the very few times where you're going to hear me say, pick the 45 ACP Shield over the 9. It doesn't recoil that much more. I used to shoot it back in like 2015 to 2016 and loved shooting it. I was that guy with my M&P Shield 45 ACP. But if you had to choose, if you're on a deserted island or you're in the middle of a Halo campaign, legendary run that you just can't beat because the jackals keep sniping you, and you only have a 9mm or a 45 ACP option, and you have to choose one or the other, and that's the only thing, there's nothing else that exists, I'm telling you, I recommend you go with the 45 ACP. I'm telling you, it shoots better. It's a better overall gun, in my opinion, than the 9. It's just my take. All right, well, going on to the pros. If you got this far, you're like 21 minutes in, you haven't hit the like button, what's wrong with you? All right, here, I'll show you my 1911 if you hit the like button. Deal? Here it is, okay? Boom. There it is. It doesn't work. It's trash. Go look at the review, but it looks cool. All right, so let's move into the pros. American made. Of course. And someone leave a timestamp so they know when the pros start, because all the haters, they're not gonna make it through the cons. You can just reply to that guy. If you made it to the pros, you might be happier. Let's get on with it. The pros. It's American made. Of course, that's a major plus, okay? American made product, that is a major sustain for the gun. Concealability is awesome, okay? It conceals really well. It's one of the biggest pros of the Shield. Why guys like it so much is because it disappears. But hate to bring up the bearer of bad news, there are guns that do it better, okay? And if you don't like this option, well, now there's even better modern day options that you could choose, right? Like a 43X, or you could just be an adult and probably just carry one of my favorite guns of all time, the Glock 26, and be better off. Basically the same size anyway, and the Glock 26 shoots way better. Anyway, that's a whole different video. So it's American made, conceals really well, like it's super slim, you guys can tell, okay? It's tiny, disappears, even though it's too big of a gun for what you get. 2012 called, they want their gun back. Metal grade, or metal sights, okay? Has a metal guide rod and metal sights. Okay, so we have a metal guide rod in there, excellent. Absolutely excellent. Not that you're ever gonna wanna shoot this gun that much to melt the guide rod anyway, but if you were to compare apples to apples with a 43, Glock 43 or 43X or whatever, this does have a metal guide rod, which is very based, okay? So metal guide rod, metal sights out of the factory, there you go, okay? That's a major plus. Reliability. If you don't factor in the fact that my 45 ACP gun basically died because I couldn't get through a magazine without the, okay, got his gun safe and clear, without the, you know, the thing we already talked about, the trigger device getting stuck behind the safety thing, whatever that hump is right there for over travel. If we didn't have that issue, then the gun would be amazing, okay? But regardless, reliability, 100% through normal use. I say that over 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a malfunction on a Shield over 10 years, like literally, and I've seen a ton. And I've never had a malfunction on it either, so that's super good. So take that for what it is, right? Never seen a malfunction ever. Cost. Can't talk too much about cost here, but a lot of you guys might be watching this because the cost of a shield is extremely cheap compared to other options. That's all I can really say here. If you're on a budget and you need a gun that's going to work, and you go to the gym and you can easily lock it to the rear, no big deal, and you are okay with all the cons, I would say a 45 ACP is probably a really good option for you in the shield, or a 9 if you really want to go the 9 route. Either one is still a good option if you find an item that is of, you picking up what I'm putting down, okay? So for that purpose, this is what I would refer to as a free gun, because you just donated, not the guy that can't afford, a better gun, but the guy that can afford guns, that just donated to the Patreon and ammo fund. Thanks for doing that. For those guys, this is a very cheap gun. All right. I'm telling you, it's cheap. So go look up if maybe there's a used one or whatever, and you're balling on a budget, it's a good option. Okay. I can't say much more than that without saying too much. Got it? But you guys go look it up and you'll figure it out on your own. All right, moving on. So what are my overall thoughts in summary? Well, there's never been a malfunction. Jackson, stop being weird. There's never been a malfunction over a decade. It doesn't do anything inherently wrong, right? So all the negatives, I talked about it on here today. It doesn't do anything inherently wrong. It's just too big for the capacity that you have. It's an accurate gun, right? Not the most accurate, but it's a very accurate gun. The safety is one of the few, probably the only, other than the M18, M17, the only safety that actually is a good safety for what it's for. Okay, it's for if you have to put it with a trigger guard, okay, with a trigger guard on, but you have to put it in a bag, okay, well, you can activate the safety with a trigger guard again, or you need to put it, in an emergency placement, you can activate the safety, and it's a very good safety for that use. You'll never know it's there unless you want it. Like, let me put it this way. Both of the shields that I've owned, I've had a safety on them, right? And I've never accidentally activated it because of, whatever, weird accidental activation, okay? So that is a major pro as well, is the safety. You'll never notice it ever unless you actually need it. And if you need to, with the trigger guard, throw it in a bag, or with the trigger guard, throw it in a pocket, throw that safety on with your Kydex trigger guard around it, you're going to be good to go, okay? So overall, is it a good pistol? Yeah, I would say it's a good pistol. It's just a little bit, like Halo 2, Halo 3 vibes. It's getting a little old, but that's actually a good thing because those are some of the best games other than Halo Reach, right? So it's a lot of talking for me. Overall, is it a good gun? Yes, if you're on a budget. If you're not on a super strict budget, just go with something else, or just, I don't know. Glock 19s exist, even though Glock is kind of a cringe company nowadays. But other guns exist that are bigger, and can do more. But if you're on a budget and you find one and you really like the shield for some reason, go for it, okay? All right, guys, if you got this far, seriously, hit the like button, do all the YouTube stuff. Thanks for hanging out for this super fun, over a decade-long video. And until next time, this is going to be Trench Grenade, your average. I somehow just made all of the M&P, 45 ACP, 1911, Smith & Wesson revolver, Glock 19, Glock fanboys, everyone mad in one video. Enjoyer that your mom says that we have at home, signing out. Cheers.